Hello, and welcome back to Tyranny, where last episode we ended the Edict of Fire by descending into the Valium Citadel, otherwise known as the Burning Library, and we reclaimed, we killed a bunch of Scarlet Chorus members. We also reclaimed the Silent Archive, which qualified the terms of the edict, thereby ending the Edict of Fire. And Lenatry wants to speak with us.
That's twice now. By Kyros's icy nevers, twice! Edicts have been broken before, but never in all my many years have I heard of one person doing it twice.
Actually, that's thrice. First time, the Edict of Death that was going to kill everyone in the valley at the Vendrian's Well. The second time, the Edict of Stone. And the third time, well, now, the Edict of Fire. Well, not the Edict of Stone, the Edict of Storms, my bad. Which was the same one I proclaimed. But maybe later I'll slay an Archon. Still planning my day.
I think that's a jest. But others will see your actions and assume you're capable of just about anything, especially slaying an Archon.
Mel Narat. Oh, I've got a blade with Narat's name on it. That being said, I believe our current task is to head back to the Citadel. Yep, reporting back to Ascension Hall. Assuming Tunon doesn't summon me back to his side first. Still kind of dreading that. And once again, blue, 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 blue. Only the stone sea remains. Well, how do you like this load screen? Pretty good art, yeah? I think so. Alright, what are these guys going to argue about now? Vendrian's Well is certainly smaller than I remember it, but I thank you for inviting me here all the same. Renata aims a critical eye around Ascension Hall. I appreciate your help, but we should be done with Kairos sooner rather than later. The sages have enjoyed our neutrality, while the rest of the tiers doomed themselves to shortcomings and failure. When Kairos pushed for these borders, you can go wherever you want, Renata. I won't hold a spear to your neck. Are we really having this conversation? Both of you get in line. We have work to do. Don't tell me this friction catches you by surprise. My kind spends too much time indoors, after all. As you can tell, our little coalition is not so little anymore. We need to take some time to regroup as allies and discuss the future. I'll keep you abreast of any updates. She regards you with an uncertain frown. It bears recalling that all of this started in earnest when you claimed the mountain spire. If you haven't already, I'd look into the other spires scattered across the tiers. You might learn something more about this influence you seem to cultivate. People will look to you as a beacon of hope, and you'd best be prepared for anything that it could mean. Well, I've already got the spire in Lethian's Crossing, and I already have the spire in the Blade Grave, so I'd say I'm pretty Pretty well on my way for that. Oh, great. What now? Fucking Narot. I figured. Don't worry. I'll bring hellfire and death upon them. The chorus are attacking the citadel! The breathless runner takes in the shocked glances. There are gangs of crimson as far as I could see. There must be thousands of them. Ooh. I was wondering who'd be the first to strike directly. If our scouts speak true, we're up against a foe that could strike us in staggering numbers. What are your orders, Fatebinder? I don't think we can just hack our way out of this, but falling back is not an option. Are the chorus here alone, or are the disfavored here to ruin things? Reports indicate the disfavored sent troops out of Ironhearth headed west, but they aren't headed here. We've no word of them crossing into the valley. This time we'll be facing an enemy that isn't distracted by its own breakdown of civility. Has Narot been spotted amongst the horde? No word yet, but I wouldn't expect that coward to lead from the front. But if he's absent, that means he's not here to inflict order and discipline. And maybe we can kill the toughest gangs and help the weak ones lose the will to fight? These conscripts are no threat individually, but we just don't have the waking hours to kill the numbers they can field. Then I know the situation. Do everything I say, and we might live. First step, bird's eye view. If Narot's gonna send his forces my way, then I'm gonna send my forces his way. Kairos' forces have the citadel surrounded, and our scouts tell us more are on the way. Ari points out across the horizon towards specks of movement in the panorama of the valley below. She points towards the mountains to the northeast. You can see the line of reinforcements snaking back north to the Stone Sea. I'm all for a good challenge, but this... it just seems impossible. Even if we can call in all of our alliances, our odds are beyond hopeless. The massive sculpture rumbles, shaking the masonry of the spire, sending her off balance. Boom, baby. The orb in the center of the resonator spins with the push of some unseen force. Where the structure once exuded warmth, it now gives off a ferocious heat that singes your face the longer you stare into it. A sound like music swarms in the air around the structure, but it's painful and disharmonious to your ears. Well, this is some shit, Serenesta shout over the disharmonious music. You'd think a spire would know some better songs, but I guess there's no accounting for taste. She refocuses on you with a mixed expression. You do realize the energies of this place are all centered on you. I don't know what makes you so special. The spire is now fully awake. Its long, dormant currents of energy dance to your presence. Thrown off balance by the trembling spire, Ari crouches to regain her footing. That wasn't an attack. That was the spire, right? Because if that was an attack... The spire often communicates in visions. Perhaps this is its way of saying it has something to discuss. Fatebinder, now's as good a time as any to see if your link to this spire can yield us some measure of defense. At the very least, perhaps you could make sure no one is able to teleport up here. If you can control that, we can at least ensure ourselves a fallback position. When I resolved the Edict of Storms, I felt a rush of arcane knowledge and intimate understanding of the Edict. Maybe I can proclaim it without the words. I'm sure those soldiers below don't really know if you carry the words of Kairos or not. Might be worth seeing how many of them fall for the bluff. Ah, Fatebinder Rogulus. Forgive me the curtness of this rust missive. The matter is too urgent for the luxury of formalities. I know that you braved the flaming ruins of the Citadel. The archive. Did you find it? Is it safe? I kept it. At this point, the chorus are marching against me. Might as well know my allegiances. Naturally, I saved the archive. Why would I destroy the culmination of centuries of sage learning when it can be turned to better uses? It is an impressive artifact. Perhaps one day I'll have to show it to you. Since I'm about to show my full might. The mystic hum of the spire pulses to the cadence of your heart. Boom, 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 boom. The ancient structure awaits your command. Touch the resonator and concentrate. Prepare yourselves. I have an edict to proclaim. As you touch the stone structure, your sense of the moment slows, and you feel the entirety of the tears at your fingertips. The spire stands ready to channel your will. The Edict of Storms will generate a massive storm that covers huge areas of the world. The chaotic energy unleashed will cause random damage to strike your enemies during combat. That's fine. I am the Stormcaller after all. And the Scarlet Course primarily uses flame. Let's see some magic, people. That actually worked! Ari leaps into the air, pumping her arm in excitement, only for her face to turn pale a moment later. That actually worked. Her eyes laden with fear dart towards you. How is that even possible? Having broken the edict, I seem to be able to recreate it, if in a limited fashion. So you've absorbed a fragment of the Overlord's magic, perhaps? Uri shakes her head. There's a reason I don't deal with arcane nonsense. I'm as baffled as you are, but if what you're... that's more planetary, whatever. But if what you're saying is probable as guess as any, our binder has proclaimed edicts, broken them too. Eb regards you with a cautious glare. Just when I think I have you figured out. We can ponder this later. For the moment, we need to strike while the surprise is still fresh. Captain Ari tightens the fasteners on her gauntlets as she marches towards the portal. I'll be sure to leave a couple alive. Someone needs to tell the others what happened when they attack Ethan Drake. The Stormcaller.
One moment, my friend. Just let... Of course. How can I help? I am nothing if not a... Well, you might want... I am nothing if not... Well... I am nothing if not a semi... And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of the edicts, Lanatry? Kairos has cast many edicts over the ages, and to my knowledge, never were two edicts exactly the same. Edicts defy our understanding of magic. Kairos' magic works over vast distances, over infinite durations, and no archon or mere mage can counter the force of the edict. Do edicts work the same arcane principles as spellcraft or other magic?
Edicts are the strongest manifestation of magic we know, and they seem to violate all other lesser phenomena. No dispel cantrip has ever dented or abated an edict. Even archons with powers of great durability cannot shrug off their effects. Just look at Cairn. Now, what I find curious, edicts can flex a little, Or so my studies suggest this is the case. Take the Edict of Storms. While the day it was proclaimed was the most violent, the actual radius of the storm has changed over time. But most will have none of my hypotheses on this matter.
I'm curious about a specific edict. Oh, of course. Act away. Any thoughts on the Edict of Execution? As you said earlier, it seems unlike the Overlord of Traffic. In coincidence, it would have been more efficient to use an Edict of Fire and have the generals claim the charred ground. Kairos wants someone to acclaim the hall, I'm sure of it. And what of the Edict of Stone? Well, the Edict of Stone ravaged the realm of Azure. The upheaval of earth and rock turned the rolling plains of into a craggy steppe known as the Stone Sea. Since the edict was directed at the traitor's Archon of Stone, it would seem the upheaval in Azure was a secondary consequence. Although I imagine little of what Kairos does is unintentional. Fire? I was there when the ground erupted with fire, and I don't think I remember ever being as terrified as I was that day. If I hadn't woken early, I would have likely perished in my sleep or awoken to the experience of being immolated. I have very conflicted feelings about the matter. The School of Inconquil had every opportunity to surrender. The leadership chose to stand against the most powerful force on Tyratus. And while this is all very terrible, it was entirely preventable. You think me crazy, but there is part of me that saddened that I lived through an Edict of Fire. Kairos has used this before. I figure if I'm going to have years taken off my life fleeing an edict, it would be nice if it was a historical first. What about storms? Well, I think you know more than most would on the subject. I watched with great interest when it happened, but fleeing the Edict of Fire was a more pressing concern. The Edict of Storms turned the once forested lands of Stalwart into a wind-swept wasteland. They call it the Blade Grave now, since only the iron and bronze armaments remain. Hurricane breezes, rust winds, and relentless lightning have destroyed houses and farmland. Something else. Edicts in general. A spell is to an edict as a drop of rain is to a hurricane. Edicts and spells are both magical cantrips, but differ in intensity by order of magnitude. Edicts are almost commands to Tyratus that must be carried out until the instructions allow for the magic to end. If Kairos wants a plague until next Judge's Day, expect copious bobos until next Judge's Day. Nothing has ever dispelled an edict. Nothing outside of the edict's own sunset clause, as I like to think of them. Alright, what's your conjecture about the edicts?
So, in my studies, some edicts resolve some problem of the overlords and then vanish into history. But the edicts that linger around, almost all of them begin to widen. Their effects become more intense. Here's the intriguing part. The older the edict, and the more that's written about it, the more the reports of that edict get more dire over time.
That's how legends work. Each generation tells them bigger. And that's also how the Archons work.
True, I could just be overreacting to sloppy record-keeping, but my hunch is that there's some correlation going on here. I contend that edicts are powered by fear. Fear of Kairos helps fuel the casting, and fear of the edict feeds the magic, sustaining it, and, if enough people fear it, even growing it a bit.
I agree.
Intellectual honesty demands that I study the matter more. If I'm correct, the more people fear and obsess over an edict, the stronger it becomes. Anyway, another study for another time.
What is something else?
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of the spires? History used to say that the older realms built the spires. These days, your little children repeating that Kairos has built them. Guess that's the new history. There are spires all over Tyratus, although I don't know the count, maybe 40 or so. 5 of them are in the tiers, and generally the spires follow the old walls, often occurring at junctions in the old masonry. The mountain spire is a notable exception. The other spires connect to the old walls, but the mountain spire is just freestanding, a sore thumb in the middle of the tiers. Any idea who built the structure on top of here? Know any sculptures of the superhuman strength and the power to fly? If not, I'm out of ideas. Structurally speaking, looks vaguely similar to the sculptures in the Academy of Tides, but if that were the case, I think we'd know more. I also noticed the resemblance, but I can assure you, if it was built by an old tidecaster, it was the best-kept secret of the school that prided itself on showmanship and boasting about your exploits. Oh, so you studied the art of being insufferable, and here I thought it was a natural gift. The symbols look like they could be related to the symbols found in the old walls, so I'm all but certain the structure was built by the same craftsman. Any idea why magic works better? The sages liken the phenomenon to heat radiating from a candle. The air is just thicker with magic the closer you get to the spire. It can be deadly trying to work spells close to a spire if you aren't wise to the effect. I'd be famous if I could tell you why this happened. I always assumed they are the magical equivalent of river sources. Just as water collects endlessly from certain special sites, so are there special places where magic pours endlessly from a magical source. What are their purpose? Lightning rod, perch, signposts. In this matter, I only have conjecture and flights of fancy. The best hypothesis is that they were all built of sites of medieval settlements that are now long gone, so maybe their haphazard placement is a hint about how the maps of old might have looked.
And I'd be happy to oblige, ever since the...
Old walls.
Familiar is a relative term. I think I know more than most, but it's a subject of mystery, even to the scholars. Though, I must admit, in addition to my reading, I've ventured into the old walls on occasion, and soiled many undergarments in the process.
Kairos forbids the exploration, but did the tiersmen have similar laws? In typical Younger Realms fashion, entering the old walls was never illegal, but plundering them was, well, the logic being that what rests in the old walls belongs to your local ruler, not you. The noble houses made a point of buying up anything that came out of the old walls. Plenty of ancient stuff in there, but sometimes you find stuff that's just a generation old, left by the last fool trying to search for treasure. Who built them or why? Well, we can only seem to agree that they were built, and there's no consensus as to the who of it. We generally use the old realms or the older realms when describing folk that must have done all this construction. That's also where the young realms get their names indirectly. Azure, Stalwart, and all of them are older than you or I, but compared to the old walls, they're babies. As for the why, well, that's anyone's guess. I always assumed it was an ancient road and aqueduct network. If you just needed to fence off your neighbors, you wouldn't have such elaborate expansive masonry on the inside. What sorts of things have you seen? Well, aside from the terrifying Bane, well, every section of the old walls has its own jaw-dropping architecture. I've seen bridges that move when someone is near, mystical barriers that must have been standing for eons, and I've seen remains. So many remains. A lot of them sages from centuries past, or hapeless drifters that must have been desperate for shelter. What fascinates me most are the symbols found on the interior architecture. I can't help but think if we shared notes with other old walls explorers, we might someday decipher the meanings. If you've been through the old walls, you must be familiar with the Bane. More so than is healthy. I've seen one rip a young scribe in half with its nebulous talons, and I've run away from more than my fair share of angry Bane. That sounds redundant. They all seem angry. Here are all sorts of theories. Here there were dead mages, the nightmares of Archons come to life, one sage believes they're Kairos' children. He guesses you have enough ink and parchment you can crap out any dumb idea. I profess to know very little and stick to what can be observed. They appear cunning, but lacking language, and they appear to have animal-like qualities, but they seem to be drawn to only magic and commotion. Food and water seem irrelevant.
And I'd be happy to oblige, ever since the fall of the...
Magic of the Archons. How does it work? They all have magical powers that are intuitive. When Rot pulls out someone's mind or Griffin Ash protects a soldier, the magic isn't a assigned spell or ritual. It's closer to flexing one's hand. Archons are the axiom of magic. The spell pioneers. I'm sure this analogy is off in many ways, but I see Archons as mothers of the original magic and everyone else is just imitating them. To confuse things a bit, some Archons learn to cast other spells in the same fashions as his lesser mages. If you are as important as an Archon, you quickly learn that all knowledge is power. I've studied many Archons over the years. Are all Archons loyal? Officially, yes. In actuality, no. Those with the true gift for magic always come to the attention of Kairos. A few manage to evade attention for a bit. The School of Tides was founded by one such uncontrollable, but these are history's exceptions. Alright. Occulted Jade, Archon of Tides, has never bowed to the Archon of Kairos, and it's said she survived the assassin sent to silence her. It makes her flight from Kairos before the war all the more troubling. We knew her as a symbol of strength, but when threatened, her weaker nature won. When we write bibliographies of the Archons, we often refer to them as exarchs in their formative years before stepping into their prime. but officially Kairos is supposed to grant all titles of Archon. It's quite the faux pas to self-appellate. Exactly why Jade insisting on calling herself the Archon of Tides. She didn't need Kairos' approval to wear the title she deserves, and I know she loved the fact that doing so must have annoyed Kairos. How is an Archon born or bred? Well, I think we all dream of one day waking up and being an Archon. Given some of the madmen and loons that have exhibited mystical greatness, it can seem unfair that the rest of us can't do it. I can say with confidence Archons aren't born, they become. Graven Ash is a good study on this. Before he was a commander, blah, 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 blah. We already know this. Our missives with Fatebinder Rogulus have told us enough about this. Blah, 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 blah. Didn't have that lifetime. Well then, he's truly lucky. I can't remember a moment when I wasn't plagued by this power. Really? Fascinating in some. And so in some it really is a lifelong quality. Well, if it were easy to make sense of things, this wouldn't be academic. And then, let's speak of something else.
And I'd be happy to oblige.
I'm trying to get Lanatree to open up about secrets. Secrets that he seems hell-bent on keeping hidden from me. I am the Stormcaller. And you would do well to fear it. Death Knell. A gang of rain-soaked Scarlet Chorus trails behind Death Knell, a mixture of awe and confusion resting on their faces. What foul trick are you playing that the weather comes to your aid? I should thank you for separating the wheat from the chaff. The sight of seeing dozens struck dead by lightning make a good show to startle off the dead weights. She points back behind her shoulder, leaving the bravest with the privilege of tearing off your limbs, one joint at a time. She turns to her soldiers and lets out a primal howl, her warriors echoing the battle cry in dissonant tones. With rage in their eyes, the warriors ready their weapons, eager for a fight. Fools. Did you not hear me proclaiming the Edict of Storms? Either I cast it by myself, or did so with the Overlord's blessing. Think that through very carefully. Do not liken yourself to the Overlord. Your magic may have startled my weaker troops, but your magic is nothing my own blood chanters could not affect. Isn't that right? She looks to one of her mages for a nod of approval, but instead is met with a blanched look of fear, mouth agape in terror. Enough talk. You will be trampled and forgotten. Only Narat will remember your name.
Wait!
Doubt it. Remember, I also trained in lightning.
I did that?
For this very moment. Because I was going to be the Stormcaller. And Ebb is also quite heavily laden with storm magics.
This is useless. I should try something else.
And I'll do a little bit of fire, why not?
Get back!
Intensity may be weakened, but it's still more than enough to kill Death Knell.
On it.
And only one fury remains.
This weapon is like nipples on men. Useless.
You'll have to hit harder than that.
Oh, but I will. On the blood of our
That's how I like my
fathers,
prey. Well
on
hung.
the blood of our sons, the tears will be freed from Kairos' reign. The Fatebinder, clad all in bronze, bearing the artifacts of Stalwart, backed by Vendrian's Well, and the sages and the Tidecasters. Hold! Don't pursue them out of the Citadel. Captain Tarkus lifts her sword triumphantly as she uses the order. Let those who have survived the edict and our blades live to spread word of our deeds. I thought we would blunt our last weapon-cracking core skulls before being overwhelmed. But the rabble was downright terrified by your edict, and panic has claimed the giant mob. I almost feel sorry for the warriors who are brave enough to stand their ground and fight us. Almost. You want to travel up to the spire, get a good view of our glorious aftermath from high up. I'm sure you enjoy seeing the enemy flee the valley. She salutes you with a smile. As always, good hunting. Your work here is done. I'll oversee the wounded and the salvage. Shocked and demoralized by your display of power, and the ease of which you dispatched their leader, the Scarlet Chorus fighters lose their nerve and scatter in defeat. But the survivors carry with them fearful murmurs of the powerful Archon, Ethan Drake, a being of enormous might who cast an edict with the same authority as the Overlord. Confusion sets in amongst the realm. Amid the whispers and misinformation, one fact remains consistent. The Overlord's power has been challenged. You safely assume such rumors are making their way back to Kairos. The high winds of your edict swept the air, dashing debris against your spire. Torrential rain falls, hitting hard enough to bruise skin. Lightning strikes the ground, endangering anyone out in the open. It isn't long before the storm begins to wane, slowly falling from a gale to a light rainstorm, and after a few days it becomes a simple breeze. Eventually, the skies calm as your edict dissipates, releasing Vendrian's Well from its grip. You gather a small council of your closest allies and plan your next steps from the safety of your spire. No sooner do you get started than Calico, Fatebinder of Tunon, pays visit bearing an important message. We may not be able to end the Edict of Stone. I'll try to, though. I keep hearing about this little spire you've been calling your own. Nodding with a smirk, Fatebinder Callio peers over the edge of the tower. Now that you've slaughtered those who would take your lands, I think your claim is official as it gets. Nice to see you, but how'd you get up here? Isn't it obvious? Callio shakes her head with an agitated scowl. The bigger question is, how did the most convincing impression of the Overlord Taratus has ever seen? How did you do the most convincing impression of the Overlord Taratus has ever seen? No one's entirely sure what to make of you these days. They say you spoke an Edict of Storms, not a proclamation of Edict of Kairos, but your own Edict of Storms, your own mystical storm. You're no mere Fatebinder, of that we can be certain. You've proclaimed and broken the edicts perhaps one too many times. If I had known you could do this when I first met you, I'd maybe have tried to kill you in earnest. I hope for the sake of Taratus the right person has inherited this gift. I don't know what to make of you, Fatebinder. Proclaiming and breaking the Overlord's magic, claiming these awful towers. It should come as no surprise that an edict is within your grasp, but I still find room for surprise. You're powerful in ways that gang bosses and mages aren't. You commanded this place to do your bidding and unleash something incredible on the world. That isn't the work of a Fatebinder. If anything, it's the work of an Archon. Beast woman, follow Alpha. From here to the ends of Tears lands and farther still, with Paw prowl deep into cold north, hunting armies from Kairos and Alpha's side. Together, Shadowhunter and Alpha will slaughter whole of Primus' tribe. I don't have any idea how you're able to do this, but it isn't power that any scholar can wield. This is something else. You've not some ambitious hedge mage who learned it all out of a book. You're more like an Archon, where it just comes naturally. She shakes her head with a grin. I always knew you'd be a delightful bit of trouble. But I didn't think you had a touch of the Overlord's power in you. Why didn't you tell me? I genuinely didn't know I had it in me. You didn't know if it would work and you decided to play with the arcane equivalent of a mountain tipping over? My confidence in you swells, Fatebinder. It's only natural to have doubted yourself. The edicts have always been the magic of Kairos and Kairos alone. Anyone claiming to be able to cast an edict would be presumed crazy. And yet, a sane man watching what you just did would see the power of the Overlord in your voice. Curious. She taps her chin in thought, looking at you head to toe. Suppose you've no reason to play the fool. I'd say, however, that it is you came into this power. You know that you've drawn the attention of the Overlord, so congratulations, I think? I come bearing direct orders from the Overlord. Callio clears her throat, her voice becoming somber and severe. Two things. Kairos has decreed that the Overlord demanded one, and only one, Archon is fit to rule the Tiers. To that end, the Archons are to settle through death or dominance who is the one Archon fit to inherit the Tiers. Loyal subjects of Kairos don't turn on each other. This is how the madness started, with the Archons falling into disorder. Then consider this Kairos' sense of humor. I can't speak as to why it's got to be this way, but I would wager the Overlord figures maybe it's easier to let you all choke on your own infighting than to try getting you all to obey. And of course, if you consider yourself a loyal subject to Kairos, you're going to have to throw your weight around, because I have more news. Kairos has decreed you are the newest Archon. Fatebinder Callio bows with an exaggerated flourish. So the other Archons now have orders to control or destroy you, and the other way around. Her face becomes a beaming smile. See? This is why I was trying to avoid getting Kairos' attention. And to be clear, this is a command from Kairos, but not an edict. Correct. There's no edict backing this order. She smiles with a toothy grin. Such encouragement hardly seems necessary when the task is its own reward. The Overlord has merely rescinded Kairos' peace. The Arcanes may kill and maim each other without breaking any laws. Kairos knows, rightly so, that anonymities new and old will drive the Archons to mutual destruction. The Overlord need only move the pretense of peace and watch the ensuing violence. Callios shrugs with a smile. Would you have preferred another do-or-die edict? What of the court? Have you heard what Tunon or Blood and Mark think of this? Well, as per usual, Tunon has the emotional range of pumice, but Blood and Mark seemed almost giddy. I think the old Shadow is already putting names on his daggers. I was wondering if Blood and Mark would hear this order and promptly stab Tunon, but no. It would seem the Archon of Shadows is happy to serve Tunon. Makes sense. I've never known that old Shadow to crave that kind of power. But you'll have to deal with them too, and I fear greatly how that will turn out. I imagine Tunon is too loyal to bow to you, and Blood and Mark is too proud to accept you as his better. She nods quietly for a long moment. There is no way this will end well for some of us. Well then. Thank you for delivering the message. First step is deciding you won't bow to one of the other Archons. I wish you best of luck in your upcoming struggle. Know that when it comes for you, for Blood, Mark, and Tunon, I and the other Fatebinders won't interfere. Let's just get this one thing clear. I want no part of this contest, Fatebinder. Sorry, Archon, I bow to you. The rest of the madmen can fight over the right to rule this mountainous shithole. Thank you. Seren bows with a graceful sweep of her arm and a curtsy. Just don't let Narat get away with a bat of the eyelashes and a polite surrender. A question me and the other binders have been asking. Can you do this again? Nuvenal believes that it believes in you. Another, who shall remain nameless, takes the more cynical stance that the Overlord has a hand so far up your ass she can puppet your mouth, and you couldn't cast a second edict if you tried. She sizes you up, head to toe. Me? I think you have it in you. Or at least I like the idea of proclaiming an edict of yours someday. I have something in mind for Narat. I'll issue an edict upon Cacophony in the Stone Sea. Oh, the tears are about to get a lot more interesting with that attitude. Kellio nods with a satisfied grin, rubbing her belly. I can taste their limations already. This isn't the only spire that is awakened, for the lack of a better word, to your presence, right? Correct. There are other spires I call my own. Well, I would urge you to take a journey to the Stone Sea. There are 2 spires, the Aurora in the north and the Dawning to the east. That, to the best of my knowledge, have yet to be claimed. With a nod, she begins to make her way towards the exit. When you roll to Ratus, look me up. If you're successful, I know I'll be in need of a new Archon to serve. I know I'm mostly sober, but just so we're clear, you did just issue an edict, right? Lanitry taps his quill to his tongue, unsure of what next to write. First you cast an edict, then this full-on war of Archons. This whole chapter of the Chronicle, it's reading like fiction. Heh, almost like it is. So Kairos has ordered all the Archons to fight it out until only the strongest remain? I think we can now safely say the course philosophy's been vindicated. A rumbling mutter stirs from under Barrick's helmet, devoid of any cognizant words. Alpha birthed own words of power like human Primus called Kairos. Is better mystic than Broodmother that kills in shadow, than Stonestalker's 100 blood, than Beastwoman Archon slaughtered by Mark of Shadows. Yeah. Kills in Shadow knew that Alpha was most powerful human in all of Tyr's lands. A curved claw taps the side of her snout. Nose was not wrong. One last thing. Hesitating before she leaves, Callio taps the parchment she's been holding to her forehead with a self-deprecating scoff. All this talk of you being the second coming of the Overlord, and I almost forgot my duties. This is a court summons from Bledenmark, Tunon's assassin. I suggest you read it carefully as part of your preparation. Your survival might depend upon it. Good luck. Archon. Archon. We must speak before this goes further than it already has. I know you've got a thing or two on your plate, but if you could make some time for me, a little bird has brought us some interesting news, and I'd hate to go stabbing people without you. Binder. Ari approaches you breathless. Our scouts have spotted disfavored forces marching on Lethian's Crossing. Oh, no. The decree from Kairos must have put a fire under Graven Ash. I bet my spear he wants the town Zion under his control. We need to gather our forces and strike back. Call a meeting of the Coalition. You're right. I'll gather everyone to discuss our next steps. We can count on them accomplishing that much. She frowns. Though Kairos knows if they'll cooperate with each other. We'll be waiting for you. It's all kicking off, boys. It's all kicking off, and I still have to end the Edict of Stone. Rarely in my life have I experienced relief to the extent your missive inspired. No other action you've taken to this point, incredible as many of them been impressed me so thoroughly. The vagueness of the better uses of which you spoke could concern one with less faith in your judgment. Once the Civil War concludes, you and I shall have to study this archive, so as to determine what aspects of it can be saved and which must be purged under the law. Kid, I take it you're aware of the Overlord's latest decree. If not, let me give it to you straight. Now's a bad time to be an Archon in the tiers. Since I'll most likely be the one to cut you down, I thought I'd first explain. It's not my choice. But if it was, I would still choose to kill you. See you soon. If If I'm to die by your hand, I would prefer it to be in battle, face to face, or that be face to shadow. Regardless, at the risk of depriving you the thrill of a good ambush, I would ask that we meet in person as peers, drawing blades openly, if that is what it has come to. On the reverse of this parchment, I mapped a location. Let us meet and settle things there. I'll provide you 2 days to scout the location in advance should you require. Hope to see you there. Now, Barrack.
I have come to regard knowledge as a kind of curse, and I better understand the Overlord's injunctions against too much of it. In knowing why my armor clings to me, I think I began feeling it grow into me. Has it buried itself deeper within me? Or do I imagine this?
He sighs.
Kairos has ordered that the Archons determine a ruler of the tiers from among themselves. This is the time to go to Archon Ash, submit to him, and beg clemency.
I'll consider our options before they become clearer. As they become clearer.
I understand. Better to make a tactical decision with all available information at hand. Do not mistake hesitation for consideration, though. One reveals new paths forward. The other closes paths formerly available. I shall follow your lead, Archon. For now.
It is... I don't want to kill Ash if I don't have to, but we shall see. We shall most certainly see. Hey, Binder, let me get something off my chest. First nods to grab your attention. I burn up inside. When I dance, it's like I'm trying to let out the fire to quench it in blood. Instead, I just end up stoking the flames. Shit, did any of that make any sense? She smooths down her feathers and sighs. I think I follow. I've always had such a strong connection to my Furies. That bond made me feel, I don't know, like part of something? Now it feels like they're in me. They rise up when I dance, each time a little more restless. When we were going after Crocus and Orisa, I could almost hear them, like they were whispering to me, tugging from somewhere deep. And even if I can't deny this all sounds a lot like, you know, him. She looks up from the distance. Eldian. What? That healthy codger from Lithian's Crossing? Shit, Fatebinder. Thanks for bringing me back to Doratus. The thought alone that I could be anything like Narat makes me want to flay myself. She inhales deeply, chest rising. Then lets it out through her teeth in a low, prolonged hiss. Fire is a complicated metaphor. Sure, it rages and consumes, but it also warms and illuminates. Lost friends can be the same. You've lost me, Fatebinder. Look to your sisters for guidance and confidence. Like fire. Got it. Nice, normal, red fire. Not floating broadshead at all in it. She frowns, nodding. Narat's a parasite. You're a predator. Now he's a parasite for sure. But that wasn't always true. Maybe it starts with the killing, but eventually you've got others to do the killing for you. That's how Archons are made, right? And Overlords. If you don't want to turn into him, don't be like him. What exactly are you suggesting? Maybe don't eat people. No promises. Those beastmen have opened my eyes to a new and exciting diet. One more thing before I call it a day, Fatebinder. What is it? After we spoke to Essa, I slipped a scout some rings to keep an eye on the place and send word if anything out of the ordinary happened. She cracks her knuckles beneath her calloused palms. Apparently, there have been some strangers looking about. I'd like to head back to River's Break and see if we can grab one. Maybe take a little knowledge out of him. But you know, not in the directly out of the head kind of way. She frowns sheepishly. Priority. Thanks. Who knows? Maybe we'll dig something we can use. Let's get moving. The war's not over yet. There's tier 6. Well, Lanatree wants to talk to me. Finishing the last pen strokes of a note running about his left arm, Lanatree looks up to you with a nod.
Not to steal your glorious day in the sun, but I must say, now all my notes on you are suddenly worth 10 times their weight in iron. My journals will melt the linens off the ladies, I tell you. What's that you say? Buxom, nubile lasses with an interest in old men who know history. You need a definitive tractatus on the trials and tribulations of the Archon of the Tears? Ha! Well, you're in luck.
Good for you, Lanatree.
I think one can safely conclude that you have the Overlord's attention, and that of the Tears. Soon, all of Tyranny. You realize, I trust, I hope, that nobody other than Kairos has ever cast an edict until you.
Are you sure history hasn't just edited or forgotten those who could rival the Overlord?
Well, I have a hard time believing that someone would cast an edict and not have it noticed.
Yes, but maybe a rival casts an edict. Kairos kills the rival and takes credit for the events.
Well, as of now, I've seen with my own eyes that the Overlord is not unique in this regard. And I suppose you're all the evidence I need to throw suspicion on the record. Now, if you are right, that implies the Overlord has no qualms silencing and murdering those who pose a threat. In your case, at least my written record of you might survive. See? I'm being optimistic.
It's also safe to assume that Kairos would try to solve me in some fashion.
At the same time, if you really were a meaningful threat, you'd have already been the victim of an edict, or bled in Mark's daggers. So this has me rather curious. Just what does the Overlord wish to do with you?
Happen to know when Kairos first cast an edict?
Good question. In parts north, it's commonly held that Kairos' Edict of Dust was the first, but it was cast in the year 11. It was just the first edict to ripple across the whole of Tyranny. If you lived somewhere that used to have antelope, you probably think that's the first edict of the Overlord. But here, the answer is given to us by the Overlord's own sense of posterity. Year 0 of Kairos' calendar is said to correspond to the day Kairos went from warlord to wearer of many crowns, a victory won when the first Edict of Storms shocked both the Cloud Barons and the realm of Medrev to capitulate.
Antelope. Is that some kind of animal?
Yes, or it was, at least, until they were all wiped out by the Edict of Dust. Or that's as best we've pieced it together from the records. From what we've gathered from their skeletons, they were some sort of mute beast man that ran on 4 legs.
Antelope are not like beast women.
She counters, flexing her claws once, twice, 3 times in annoyance.
Antelope have hooves for fleeing. Beast women have claws for killing. Antelope don't eat meat, are spooked easy, are large but helpless, lumber but lack reason, are prey. Silverback tribe hunted antelope extinct.
She sniffs and flicks the sage a pointed stare.
Old ink mystic tells many strange, stupid tales. Thinks to know everything.
I suppose I'm more of an expert in living things, like birds, and can't quite confirm or deny what you're saying, but just forget I said anything.
We should get going.
Indeed. Once again, I find myself wishing the days and nights would slow down just a hair. Never enough hours to journal these dense days. Let us be on our way.
Eb.
Hail, mighty Archon.
Eb salutes you with a nod, pounding her staff to the ground as she stands at attention.
Your newfound power runs in the face of what I thought I knew. All my life, I've been told Kairos alone can issue an edict. And yet, here you are, proclaiming mastery of the lands just like the Overlord.
I can replicate her powers, but I'm not just like the Overlord.
You mean his powers?
I mean his.
You say that now. Let's see if you still feel this way when the reality sinks in, and your mastery of this newfound power solidifies. The world now bows to your mere utterance. Each day you will grow stronger, while the world becomes weaker in comparison. Put another way, if I could do what you do, the world would be at the mercy of my depravity. Cursing the name of Ebb, Archon of Fecund Fluids. Let's hope your moral sextant isn't as crooked as my own. Your newfound power runs in the face of what I thought I knew. All my life I've been told Kairos alone can issue an edict. And yet, here you are, proclaiming mastery of the lands just like the Overlord.
Perhaps there are others besides me and the Overlord.
I should certainly hope not. Taratus isn't large enough for Kairos, and it's certainly going to get very interesting if the two of you start waving your edicts to and fro.
I would have felt if someone else were proclaiming edicts. I knew when this one activated the Spire. From what I know of Kairos, the Fatebinder is definitely a wrinkle in some carefully laid plans.
If anyone could cast an edict other than Kairos in the last 431 years, I'm certain we would know.
Your newfound power runs in the face of what I thought I knew.
It is fortunate about
What
me.
is it you need?
Look, Ebb. Now, can you tell me the thingy?
Greetings, Archon. Of course. How can I help? This feels like a logical continuation of Kairos' Edict of Execution. The Archons are still not playing nicely, and so Kairos would let his children fight it out for the title of Lord of the Tears. Count your blessings, because this bodes well for you. If you come up on top, your actions at Vendrian's Well are merely the definitive history of the victor. The ends will justify all means. All you have to do is kill or subdue all the other Archons. But I mean, we've come this far.
Rod and Ash don't scare me. Not with you at my side.
Of course. How can I help? All kinds of things. My mind is
Are you
so
spying
obsessive.
on me?
Well, yes. If I'm worth my weight in tin as a craftsman of record, future generations will know of you. So yes, the Archon of Posterity sent me. You seem troubled by something that ought to be an honor.
Speak of something else.
I am nothing if not a semi-reliable
I'd like to
font of knowledge.
more about you.
What did you want to discuss?
I don't know. I'm going to say, so they say sages know all sorts of things.
I know everything, except for who's been saying that. What's on your mind?
Could you teach me something about history?
I'm flattered you think me that wise, but unless you are enthralled by migration observations and titillated by triangle ratios, I think I'd bore you silly.
But what a better tangent than triangles?
Fine, fine. If you have truly nothing better to do than talk trivia with old Lantry, so be it.
Leonard pops open the scroll case by his hip, producing a long, handwritten manuscript.
A Brief History of the Tears by Sage Lantry. Volume 1, Settlers from the East. Dry land! Came the cry from the prow of the ship. After months in the deep ocean, the pioneers of the Tears saw their promised land at long last.
The minutes roll on, and Lanitree cheerfully reads through his painstaking treatise. Listen politely. Fascinating. Meanwhile, I'm snoring.
Volume 3, years 90 to 94. If you thought 88 was a crazy time when everything changed, wait until 91.
Haunting memories of Tunon's lectures creep into your mind. Listen politely. Really? Do go on.
Well, if you enjoyed that, you're going to love Ratios of the Sun. So, by using the shadow of a staff at noon as a starting point, I used triangles to show a relation.
Unlike Tunon, Lanitree cannot kill you for walking out of a lecture. And unlike Tunon, Lanitree has to eventually sleep. You've experienced worse. But were your two measurements far enough to derive a parallax?
Ah, I knew someone would ask that. And yes, so here's my proof. Sage Winding Script shows a relationship between all half-square triangles. I have a diagram somewhere.
From time to time, the wind picks up. The howling, biting freeze offers a momentary respite from the deluge of blather. So if that's correct, you could estimate almost any length from a known angle.
Yes. Way to steal the concluding reveal from me. But yeah, that's about the gist of it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think my voice needs rest. Thank you for the rousing conversation.
Now maybe you'll tell me about the thingy?
Greetings, Archon. Of course. How can I help? I am nothing if not a...
I want to know more about you.
I am nothing if not a semi-reliable font of knowledge. What did you want to discuss?
Well,
I know my knowledge is...
I'll have to do some research on that later. Do not wish to bore you all. But I did not start the timer until later, so I believe this is where I'm going to end the episode. Next episode, we go to complete the rest of Versus Companion Quest and take our first step towards ending the Edict of Stone. Perhaps delve into some spires. But the end of the series is upon us. Very swiftly. So, this episode, even though it is not the one where we delve into the Bastard's Wound, just keep in mind that's coming up real soon. And that is the last episode you will have to vote for the classes for the Old Republic. Bear that in mind. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.